I'm sure you've all had a basketball game where you missed your first shot, and then you missed your second shot, and then you missed your third shot, and you started thinking to yourself, oh no, I'm 0 for 3 now. I can't miss my next one. And what happens is you normally do miss your next one. Because you were so worried about your makes and misses, you begin to overthink things and it actually hinders your success on the court. In this video, I want to talk about my struggles with thinking way too much about my statistics and how you can stop yourself from making the same mistake. During the first part of my sophomore year of college, an interesting thing started to develop. After about 10 games or so, I was actually leading the entire country in effective field goal percentage, which is an advanced way to calculate efficiency in basketball. Basically, after 10 games, I was the most efficient player in the country. Yes, this is true. However, something interesting started to happen. I became obsessed with the fact that I was leading the country in a statistical category, and after every game, I would immediately check to see if I was still in first place. And then I began to think about those percentages during the actual game. When I missed a shot, the first thing that would go through my mind was that my three-point percentage was gonna go down and it was gonna mess up my ranking. And then to make matters worse, I began to change my game and I would only take perfectly open shots that I knew I had a high chance of making. Basically, because of my stats being the way that they were, I actually began to change the way I played, and I changed the things that made me an effective player in the first place. Thinking about my statistics took my mind away from what was happening within the game, and it also made me hesitate on offense in situations where I would just take shots without thinking normally. I remember I had a meeting with my head coach, and I told him that this whole thing was impacting the way I was playing. We came to the conclusion that there was only one thing to do. I had to stop worrying about my stats and just play my game. So after my games, I would force myself not to go look at what my percentages were or how many points I was averaging or any of those things. I began to play more freely and in the way that I knew I was capable of. And I actually ended up the season having my most efficient year anyway. On the other end of the spectrum, during my 5th year at Colgate, I had the worst shooting stretch of my career, and it's really not even close. In conference play, I shot about 25% from 3. And during a lot of that stretch, when I didn't know how long this slump was gonna last, I started making that same mistake I had made during my sophomore year. After every game, I would go look at my statistics and see what my percentages had dropped to. After going 1 for 6 from 3 in a game, had I dropped from 34% to 32%? And because of this, I started to second guess my shot even more. It was mostly because I was embarrassed by these percentages. Well, our team went 17-1 during my slump in conference play, and I was actually playing the best I ever had outside of my shooting. My assists, rebounds, and steals were all up. My 2-point percentage was up. I was impacting winning in so many ways, but all I could think about was my shot. So I once again met with Coach Langle, and it was obvious what was bothering me. I mean, the numbers don't lie. Well, it was 3 years later, and we came to the same conclusion. Stop worrying about your stats, stop looking at your percentages, and just go play. So again, after games, I just forced myself not to look at the numbers. I didn't care. And to be honest, my 3-point percentage never really went up from there during the rest of that season. But I did start to feel better about my game. It became clear again that I was having a really positive impact on the team, and we went on to win the Patriot League Championship and play in March Madness. I share these two stories with you for a specific reason. I've gotten a lot of comments on videos over the past few months since I started this channel that go something like this. Tucker, how many points do I have to average to play Division I basketball? Or, hey, I had this many points, rebounds, and assists in my last game. And listen guys, I'm not attacking anybody. If anything, I love to hear the success you're having at whatever stage of the basketball journey you are in. However, I don't want you to make the same mistake as me and start letting your stats change the way you play. Of course, the more efficient you are in basketball, the better. But to be honest, I'm more worried about this, especially if you're a younger player. How often do you make winning plays? The plays that don't show up in the box score. And most of the time when you talk about things that don't show up in the box score, coaches like to think of things like hustle plays. But I'm talking about ways you can impact winning that go deeper than just hustling and diving for loose balls. Here are some things that you might not have thought about that can have a direct impact on winning at whatever level you're playing at. How often do you notice a mismatch on the court and you point it out to your teammates so you can collectively take advantage of it and score? Or how often do you call your team in for a huddle on free throws and make sure that everyone's matched up on defense? Do you pressure the ball so the man that you're guarding can't make an easy pass to an open shooter and buy your teammates time on defense? Yes, these are very specific things, and yet they all impact winning in definitive ways. When coaches mention that a kid is a winning player, a lot of times they aren't talking about how many points that kid has scored. Instead, they're usually talking about the intangible things that that player does really well. On the flip side, there have been plenty of high school players who had great statistics and were supposed to make it at the next level, but they didn't because they didn't do those intangible things well. It didn't matter as much to them. Draymond Green is a great example of a guy who doesn't put up crazy stats, and yet he has an immeasurable impact on winning. And this is mostly because of his defensive instincts, his toughness, and the energy he brings every game. These are controllable aspects of his game that have allowed him to have a long NBA career without ever averaging 25 points a game. Here's another secret for you. You know what doesn't win in college basketball? A team full of guys who need to put up 20 shots to be effective. So what does this mean? Well, it means that college coaches aren't always looking for a player that puts up 30 points a game to recruit. Sometimes they need that guy that does the dirty work, or is just a really good leader and a solid player. So if you really want to play in college, this is even more incentive to stop worrying about your stats. I also want to mention that statistics don't always tell the whole story. A lot of times they can be misleading. If you're putting up really good numbers in high school or at a lower level, you might start to get comfortable. The issue with this is that if you want to be successful at the next level, you need to be constantly growing as a player. You need to be improving your skills on a daily basis. I don't care if you're a 6'10" crazy athlete with offers from every school and every high major conference. We see it every year. Sometimes those guys don't pan out because they haven't improved their skills enough to get prepared for college, or if they're extremely out of the ordinary, the NBA. I also just want to acknowledge that this video shouldn't be an excuse for you to just go out in your next game and start jacking up crazy shots or doing crazy moves because you don't care about the outcome. The point of this video is to realize that you can be effective on the court whether you go 5 for 5 from 3 or 0 for 5 from 3. Obviously, work on your shot daily, but realize that percentages tend to fluctuate. They go up and down. That's how basketball works. However, what shouldn't change as easily is how you approach every single game. This means locking into all the things that are in your control that impact winning, and be great at those things. So here's my advice. When you are in a game, focus on the things that you can control that will help your team win. And after a game is over, instead of worrying about your statistics, focus on getting better. Get in the gym and put in the reps that will actually lead you to where you want to get to. And comment down below if worrying about your percentages and statistics is something that you've struggled with. And if you are a younger basketball player and you want to learn more about what you should be focusing on, check out this video on the #1 mistake that young basketball players make. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.